Victor had spent 20 years building his collection in isolation. Rare manuscripts, obscure paintings, artifacts from civilizations most people forgot existed. His brownstone on the Upper West Side was a museum of his own design, beautiful, organized, and utterly silent. At 53, he'd accepted that companionship wasn't in his nature. People were messy. They wanted things. They asked questions. His collection asked nothing. That changed the night he received an invitation to an underground auction. The venue was nondescript, a converted warehouse in Red Hook, accessible only through a password-protected door. The crowd was his kind. Wealthy collectors, old money, new money, all united by the desire to possess what others couldn't. Victor recognized a few faces. They nodded to each other with the understanding of people who spoke the same language. The items came and went. A supposedly cursed mirror from Prague, a first edition of something banned, a painting with provenance no legitimate museum would touch. Victor remained unmoved until lot 47. She entered through a side door, and the auctioneer's description was clinical. A rare acquisition, educated, fluent in 7 languages, trained in classical music and literature, suitable for private collection or companionship arrangement. Her name was Ivy. She wore a simple black dress and stood with the practiced stillness of someone accustomed to being observed. She didn't look distressed or defiant. She looked composed, blank, like an expensive painting waiting to be appraised. Victor found himself bidding. He didn't know why. The price climbed. 50,000, 75, 100. When the gavel fell at $180,000, he felt strangely breathless. The paperwork was strange but legal. Ivy was independently wealthy. According to the documents, a recluse who'd chosen this arrangement herself. She signed a contract, a 1-year companionship agreement with specific terms, room and board, a modest salary, and an NDA so comprehensive it bordered on paranoid. Victor drove her back to his brownstone in silence. She gazed out the window with an expression of mild interest, asking no questions. "I should explain what I'm expecting," he said as they entered the foyer. I'm not looking for anything inappropriate. I simply prefer quiet, structured days. Intellectual conversation, if you're inclined. You'll have your own space. We'll share meals." "Of course," Ivy said. Her voice was soft but steady. "I understand completely." She settled in with unsettling ease. She prepared excellent meals. She organized his study. She played Chopin on the piano in the afternoons, beautifully, without flourish. She never complained. She never asked about his wealth or his past. She simply existed in his space like she'd always belonged there. For the first week, Victor felt like he'd finally found what he'd been missing. Companionship without demands. Presence without chaos. But on the 8th night, he found a book on his desk he didn't remember owning. A biography of a businessman he competed against 30 years ago. A man who destroyed his first major investment. He hadn't thought about that man in decades. Ivy was playing piano when he asked, "Where did this come from?" She didn't stop playing. "I found it in your library. I thought you might find it interesting. You have a lot of history in those shelves, Victor. It must be exhausting, carrying all of it alone." He said nothing, but he kept the book. And he started watching. The strange moments accumulated slowly enough that Victor almost didn't notice them. A newspaper left open to an article about his estranged brother. A documentary about financial fraud cued on his television. A conversation with his lawyer that somehow revealed Victor had never properly updated his will. Ivy never directly referenced any of these things. She simply orchestrated their appearance into his life like a chess player arranging pieces he couldn't yet see the point of. "How did you learn to cook?" he asked one evening. They were eating her beef bourguignon, which was perfect, complex but not showy. "My mother taught me." Ivy said she was French. She believed food was about creating moments for people to notice things. Notice what? Whatever they needed to see. Ivy smiled slightly. She was very intuitive. Victor began asking more questions. Ivy's answers were always pleasant and incomplete. She'd lived in Prague, then Berlin, then Vancouver. She'd studied philosophy and music. She'd worked as a tutor for wealthy families. The details were vague enough to be untraceable, but specific enough to feel real. He hired a private investigator. The results were disturbing. Ivy didn't exist before 8 months ago. No birth certificate, no school records, no social security history. She appeared fully formed in legal databases with documents that wouldn't hold up to scrutiny. When Victor confronted her, she was reading in the study, a book of poetry. "Who are you really?" he asked. Ivy closed her book carefully. "I'm exactly who I said I was. Ivy, your companion. Though I suppose the question isn't who I am, but why I'm here. That's what I'm asking." She stood and walked to the collection, running her finger along the spines of his books. "Do you know why you collect things, Victor? Why you gather rare and impossible objects and keep them in perfect conditions, untouched by the world? Because they're valuable, irreplaceable." "No," Ivy said quietly, "because you're afraid. You lost something once, your business, your confidence, your ability to trust. So you stopped engaging with the world and started possessing it instead. Things can't betray you. Things don't leave." Victor felt something crack open in his chest. "Who sent you?" "No one sent me. I chose this. I chose you." She turned to face him. "There's a contract you never signed, Victor. One from 15 years ago. Between you and a man named Gregory Chen, the one who destroyed your first venture. He had a daughter. That daughter is dead now, and Gregory followed her less than a year later. Do you know why?" Victor's mouth was dry. "No, because he couldn't live with what he'd done to you, with how thoroughly he destroyed someone for money. It consumed him. It killed him." Ivy stepped closer. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to finish something. To show you that the person you were, the one who believed in things, who trusted, who loved, he's still in here. And he deserves another chance." "This is madness," Victor whispered. But he thought of Gregory Chen, and he thought of all the years he'd wasted. "Maybe," Ivy said, "or maybe it's exactly what you needed." Victor had a sister. They hadn't spoken in 12 years. He didn't remember making the phone call, but he found himself dialing her number with Ivy's gentle encouragement. His sister answered on the third ring, her voice uncertain. "Victor?" "Yes," he said. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For closing myself off. For letting pride destroy our relationship." There was a long silence. Then his sister began to cry. They met for coffee the next day. It was awkward and painful and real in a way nothing in his life had been for years. His sister told him about her family. 2 daughters he'd never met. She asked about his life, and he found himself telling the truth instead of offering the polished version he'd crafted. When he returned home, Ivy was waiting. "You're angry," she observed. "I'm confused," Victor corrected. "You've manipulated me into reconnecting with my past. You've orchestrated my life like you own it. I know. And you're not even sorry." "No," Ivy said simply, "because it worked. Look at yourself. You're alive, Victor. Really alive for the first time since I met you." Over the following weeks, more pieces emerged. She connected him with therapists who specialized in trauma and loss. She'd subtly encourage him to donate portions of his collection to museums. Pieces that, she noted gently, were too beautiful to keep locked away. Each move was calculated, each moment orchestrated. And the infuriating part was that she was right. Victor began to see his collection differently, not as proof of his worth or protection against loss, but as a cage he'd built and locked himself inside. Slowly, he started opening doors. He loaned his manuscripts to universities. He gifted paintings to galleries. He cleaned house. One night, as they sat in the study, now noticeably less crowded, Victor asked the question he'd been avoiding. What happens when the contract ends? Ivy had been reading. She marked her page carefully before answering. That depends on what you want. I want to know what this is. What you are. I'm a woman who was hired to help you, Ivy said. By your sister. Actually, she wrote to Gregory Chen's legal representatives years ago, asking if there was anything that could be done to help you, to reach you. They found me, a professional facilitator of situations that need orchestrating. I was contracted to spend a year with you, to create circumstances that would help you reconnect with your life. Victor felt his chest tighten. So everything, this was all arranged? Not everything. Ivy said, I was supposed to leave 6 weeks ago. The contract specified 12 months. But I didn't leave. Do you know why? He shook his head. Because somewhere in the last 5 months, I stopped doing a job and started caring about you. And that wasn't part of the plan. Ivy set down her book. I was supposed to be a mirror, showing you what you'd lost. But mirrors don't have agency, Victor. I do, and I chose to stay. You're still lying, he said, but without heat. You're still orchestrating. Yes, Ivy admitted, but now we're doing it together. That's what partnership actually is, two people choosing each other while understanding exactly who they're choosing. The conversation happened over several days in fragments, like they were slowly assembling something neither of them fully understood. Ivy showed him her real name, not Ivy, but Isabella. She showed him documents proving she was indeed a real person, just one who'd carefully constructed a separate life for sensitive work. She explained the business. Wealthy families paying for intervention specialists to help damaged loved ones reconnect with life and purpose. It's legal, she said. Barely. And it's effective, because people will accept help from someone they don't know easier than they'll accept it from someone they love. That's manipulative, Victor said. Yes, Isabella agreed. So is therapy, actually. So is love. We use whatever tools we have to help people change. What surprised Victor was that knowing the truth didn't diminish his feelings for her. If anything, it deepened them. She'd stayed when she didn't have to. She'd chosen complexity over completion. I need to know something, he said. Are you genuine? Any of it. Isabella considered this seriously. The person I am with you is genuine. The methods I used to get here were calculated. But the decision to stay, that's real. The affection I feel when you laugh. The pride I felt when you apologized to your sister. The concern I have for your future. Those are real. People can be both orchestrated and authentic. Victor, you contain multitudes. He hired a lawyer to examine the original contract. It was ironclad, designed to protect everyone involved. But when the 12 months ended, there was a choice. Isabella could leave with her substantial compensation, or she could stay, and they could renegotiate their relationship entirely. On the eve of the contract's expiration, Isabella packed her things. You're leaving? Victor asked, feeling the panic he'd expected. I'm giving you the choice, she said. This is the moment where you decide if you want me because I'm here, or if you actually want me. If you ask me to stay for the right reasons, I will. If you let me go, I'll understand, and I'll know it was just theater. Victor thought his collection, his carefully curated isolation. He thought of the man he'd been, defined by loss and control. Then he thought of his nieces, whom he'd met for the first time last month. He thought of the paintings in museums with his name on small plaques. He thought of Isabella reading poetry in his study, the way she hummed while cooking, the conversations that ran late into the night. Stay, he said, not because of the contract, not because of what you orchestrated. Stay because I love you, and I want to build something real with you, something neither of us planned. Isabella smiled, and it was the most genuine expression he'd ever seen from her. Then that's what we'll do. 6 months later, Victor's brownstone looked nothing like it had before. The rare manuscripts were still there, but they were in a study now that occasionally held other people, his sister and her daughters, visiting friends, colleagues he'd reconnected with. The paintings on his walls had been replaced with photographs. His family, places he'd traveled to, moments captured with Isabella. The biggest change was the foundation he'd established, the Chun Family Scholarship Fund, named after the man who destroyed him and the daughter he'd never known. Each year, it provided funding for students studying business ethics and financial responsibility. It was Isabella's idea and it had been difficult, but Victor had discovered something surprising. Forgiveness, once you've truly extended it, doesn't require forgetting. He and Isabella had moved out of the transactional arrangement entirely. She'd left her intervention specialist work and was writing a book about psychology and manipulation in caregiving relationships. They were partners, in business, in life, in the delicate art of building trust with someone you met under carefully controlled circumstances. One evening, they sat in the study, smaller now, cozier, and Isabella asked him something she hadn't since that first day. "Do you regret it? Meeting me the way you did?" Victor considered. "I regret that you had to manipulate me to reach me. I regret that I was so damaged I couldn't be reached any other way. But do I regret you? No, never. Do you know what I regret?" Isabella asked. "What?" "Nothing," she said, smiling. "Because this wasn't the plan, and it's infinitely better than the plan. You taught me that orchestration is beautiful, but creation is better. That control is an illusion, but love is real." Victor reached for her hand. He thought about all the rare, impossible things he'd once collected, all those beautiful objects he possessed but never truly owned, because ownership was just another word for isolation. Then he thought about this moment. Ordinary, unplanned, completely unpredictable. This was what he'd been searching for all along, hidden beneath the appearance of control. It wasn't a companion he'd bought that night at the auction. It was a teacher, disguised as a transaction. And in learning from her, he'd finally learned how to live. The real collection, he understood now, was all around him. Moments, relationships, second chances. These were the things that actually mattered. The things that couldn't be locked away or perfectly preserved. The things that could only survive if you let them change you completely.